All right, everyone. Hello? Yes, it's going. Welcome to the Fursuit Making Q&A panel. I am Phoenix, or Carly's my real name. I don't really care what you call me. I run the Phoenix Nest Fursuit Making Company. I've been making fursuits for around 10 years now. Some of the suits I've made are Telephone, everyone knows that one, Cosmic, Twilight Saints, Rays, and Sniper. Those are just some of the examples. That's about it. Your turn.
And you were like all prepared, and I'm just here to wing it.
No, that's good.
But I'm Jax, and I run MulticolorBark. I used to go by Autumn Fallings. Now I've rebranded to MulticolorBark. I've been officially a business since 2010, but I made suits before that as like a hobby and for like conventions on my own and stuff, like anime. I started out in anime, so I did a lot of cosplays.
QB.
QB.
We both made QBs.
Yep. And I've made, I guess some of my more popular suits is Havoc. You're gonna have to help me out here.
It's hard to come up with them on the spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's made a lot.
No. I actually don't have a suit currently, but I used to have Iro. He was a liger. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
All right. Well, first I want to pass around my personal headgear because I think it helps to like really look at examples close up and you're sitting far away. So I'm just gonna like start over there and you guys can like pass it and then go over there or something like that so everyone can look at it. I just ask, don't put it on. Thank you.
The character's name is Fox. It's a border collie. And it's also the mascot of the Phoenix Nest.
All right, well, does anyone have any questions to start us off with? Just raise your hand and keep going.
Otherwise, we can just ramble about
Don't be shy.
the process too.
Yes, you.
What do you personally think is the most difficult part of building a fursuit?
The head?
Like what part for you is the most difficult? Well, fursuits in general, but
Okay.
I've just mostly only built heads myself, so.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
No,
I'll go. Personally, the part that I struggle with the most is symmetry. And people ask me all the time, like, how are your heads so symmetrical? And it's like, they're not, but I try my best. And I think a good thing to help with symmetry when you're making the head is I like to take my phone and open my camera. And my camera app actually has like the grid lines on it, and I can like line it up with the middle of the head and check out do things line up and then make adjustments from there. Other than that, I'm not sure what the difficult part is. Just like taking your time and making sure everything is nice, I guess.
For me, it's kind of like there's what's difficult, and then there's what's just hard to do.
Yeah.
I find it difficult to having a creative job. You kind of have to be creative all the time. So if you're not in the mood, you can't just make I'd say carving my heads is hard because you need to be in a really creative mindset and see what you're carving out. But difficulty wise, I think probably the hardest part for me is gluing heads, because how I do it is I sew all the fur together first, everything, and then I kind of glue it and roll it onto the head. So if you screw up or something doesn't line up right, it's already started to be glued on, so you can't just take it off and start over. So it's a whole process, plus you have to go really slow to make sure you get it on in the right spots and every little piece is glued on right. So say for me, gluing heads is probably the hardest.
Yeah, you made me think of something that you have to be creative, and I do a lot of dogs and canines, but this guy was pretty difficult for me because he's a deer and I just don't do deer very often. So like figuring out how I want to do the nose and like the antlers and getting the ear shape right that's what's difficult for me, is doing things that are out of my comfort zone. Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah. Any other questions? Shoot your hand up. Yeah.
What kind of stitch do you prefer to use?
Stitch.
I think it's called,
The one where you go through the loop?
yeah.
Blanket stitch?
Yes, blanket
Yeah.
stitch. I guess that's the only stitch I really use hand sewing wise.
Yeah, that one's strong. I guess on the heads I use just like, I think it's called a whip stitch, where you just go through, like nothing fancy. Just because on the head the seams don't really need to be strong because you're going to glue them down anyway, and that seems like not bulky, so it'll just like lay down flat, nice, I guess. But yeah, other than that, the blanket stitch is good.
Yeah, I use blanket stitch for hand sewing. When I sew my bodies, I do a zigzag stitch, just because I like the seams on the inside to be like closed, so like fur can't come out the back end.
It's like serging it. But
Yeah,
not
like
really
a
serging.
serger, but I don't have a serger.
Yeah. Yeah.
For glue, is that hot glue that you're using for the heads?
You can go.
Okay. Yeah, I personally mostly use hot glue. I do use spray glue on the ears and the inside of the head. I especially like glue on the spray glue on the inside of the head, because hot glue gets hard after it dries. So if you have hot glue on the inside of your head, sometimes it'll press on your ears or just be like really hard. So I do really like the spray glue for the inside because it stays soft even when it's dry.
And what is that spray glue?
Spray glue, you can get it at like Home Depot and Lowe's. It's like, how do you describe it? Like,
It's in a can.
yeah, like spray paint, except it's glue that comes out. And you can get like, I just get whatever is like heavy duty.
I can't even remember the brand currently, but I know
I
Scotch
think
makes
it's 3M, or is it Scotch?
Well,
They both
there's
make
several. Yeah.
Yeah,
3M owns Scotch.
But yeah, there's like,
I know it's like a green can and it has red letters on it, but I can't remember what it is.
I use mostly spray glue on it. Well, when I carve it, I use hot glue to hold certain pieces on with the foam. When I put the fur on, I mostly do spray glue. I just personally like how much lighter it is. With hot glue, like if you hold a bunch of hot glue sticks, you can feel there's weight to it. So if you use all those hot glue sticks, there's more weight. But some things require a stronger hold than spray glue, so I do have like some little pieces that I use hot glue on, but I mostly use spray glue.
Yeah, spray glue is nice for like large areas that are flat. That's why I especially like it for like the front of the ears. I just like spray the whole ear and then just stick it on. Yeah, that's about it. Anyone else? Yeah, right here.
How do you get the body to be like symmetrical? Because I tried sewing a body and like sometimes the seams like kind of just go off. Like the seams, I sewed them okay and I used pins to make sure they were straight, but like it's the pieces of the pattern that aren't like together. How do I prevent that?
That sounds like when you're like putting it back together. It's kind of like a puzzle, putting it back together. So I like to do little like, what are they called?
I call them hash marks.
Hash marks or
Or just draw
darts?
little lines
Yeah.
on the seam when you trace it out on the fur, so you can reline those
Yeah,
lines.
like
back
on
out.
your pattern, if you're using like a duct tape pattern or something, on the seam, just like put little indication marks on the seam. So then when you transfer it to fur, you can put those indication marks on the fur too. And then when you're putting the seams together, line the marks up so everything fits together correctly. And on that note, for bodysuits, I usually only do 1/2 of the duct tape dummy. I only pattern 1/2, and then I just flip it over for the other half. The only time I don't do that is when it's a body like this, where it's not symmetrical, and I have to do the whole thing. And then when I'm doing that, I really just try my best to like eye things up.
Wing it.
Yeah. Yes.
So when you're making the digi-legs, do you make a special pocket for the padding, or do you just slap those things in there?
I just slap those things. Well, okay. So for the top portion of mine, like the knee and like the butt and hip, it's just a pillow that you can take out. It's just a pillow that wraps around. But for like the bottom, like the ankle or the heel, it's called a hock. But that I actually sew in so it can't like fall out when you're walking around, and it's a smaller piece too. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Use pillows.
The top piece doesn't really need to be sewn in or have any like pocket for it to go into really, because it's going to be smushed in between the fur and your body, so it'll stay in around about the same area. It's only the bottom one that can fall out of the bottom of the leg, so that's the one I sewed in also.
Does it have to be specially shaped, especially for the thighs?
Yes.
Right, like when I pattern my bodies, I use the same pattern that I made for like the shape of the digigrade to make the padding as well, so it's the same shape. It's a little more difficult to explain how I make my padding.
Yeah. It does depend on like how you do your legs, of how you pattern it. Like I know some people will make like solid chunks out of foam for their pattern. So if you have that, then you can just take right on the foam and then take that and use that as a pattern to make the padding.
How I do it is I draw like the side view of what I want the leg to look like, and I cut and I add a little bit extra for like space for your legs to be in there, and then I sew two of them together and like put it on the legs. And so like I don't have any foam or anything, I just stuff it with polyfill. That's how I do mine. So
Yeah, I do mine about the same. So
but I started off doing foam.
yeah.
It just takes longer, and it's like a lot
Hurts
of
your
foam.
hand.
Yeah. And foam is also harder to move in. You can't like bend it as easy, but it holds its shape better.
You can get a really nice, like, precise shape if you put, like, solid foam in your legs, but it's very hot and it's very hard to transport that, like, from con to con, and it is, like, really stiff. So you just kind of, it depends.
You
on
gotta
what you
pick
care about.
what you want to sacrifice.
Yeah. That's about it. You in white shirt?
Yeah, what do you use to paint the eyes? Do you use acrylic or do you use like a paint marker?
I use just normal acrylics. I try and get the like outdoor acrylic, I think it is, because I think that's a little more heavy duty. Thank you. And I just like put a small amount of paint on a paintbrush and then like kind of dab it into the screen. I know like if you get too much paint on your paintbrush and you're like painting it, it'll clog the holes, and if that does happen, I just pick it up and I like blow on it to like pop the bubbles that are like clogged in the holes. And it's just a lot of patience and like stencils. Like if I'm doing the pupil, I'll like cut out a circle so it's like precise. Yeah.
I use acrylic as well.
Yeah.
But I seal it afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I did.
With just like a clear paint sealer spray. And I do a few layers so that it doesn't chip off or come off with like, I still like, unless you're very confident you did a lot of tests, I wouldn't like submerge it in water. But also, I use a plastic canvas for my eyes, so I sand it first, because if you know, paint doesn't stick to plastic. So you have to sand it down so that it will stick. Otherwise, I've had it before in the past where I didn't sand it and I sealed it still, but over time it like just chips off.
I personally use vinyl mesh for my eye plastic or mesh, whatever. It's really whatever you want. I know a lot of people use window screen. That's what I used to use, is window screen. And then you can layer it a few times, because just like one layer of window screen isn't enough to like block your eye. I think I layered it like 3 or 4 times, and that was a good amount. So yeah, that's about it for that section. Yep, and green again.
How do you pattern the necks?
Pattern the necks.
Yeah.
I have a pattern that I just keep around that I found online years ago but it's just like,
It's hard to
wish I would've
describe.
brought it. Like
Oh, yeah.
it's straight on the top and kind of like, you know, it loops at the bottom and then goes out a little bit on the like shoulder part. And it's just like half and half. And I just measure around the hole of the head so I know how long.
Bell shape.
Kinda, yeah.
So it's two pieces?
I do 2 pieces first, and like a front and a back, and then I sew them together.
Yeah.
I don't know what Phoenix is. Do you do the same?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Anyone else over here? Akari, yes? Hi, I'm Akari.
You've got to embarrass her now.
So when you start first making the head, have you perfected a technique? Do you do the bucket method or do you do on a balaclava? Like, how do you start the head? Because that's the most important thing, is like getting it started.
I used to do the balaclava method where you just have like a little hood of, it's called a balaclava, it's just like a lycra material that just goes over your head, and then you can glue the pieces on straight to that. I think that's probably a good like beginner method. I personally do what I think is the toaster method, where it looks like the old-fashioned coasters that are like that, like a half circle. Oh wait, you can probably see it on the, conveniently I brought a head base. You can kind of see how it has a like strip, it goes like this, and then there's a half here where it's a half circle, and a half circle on this side. I know other people do like around, and then kind of like dart it in to be round on top. It doesn't really matter how exactly you do it because it gets covered up anyway. And I think you do the same thing?
Yeah.
The toaster?
I do the toaster on the sides and then a strip in the middle.
Yeah.
And then I kind of put it on and like adjust it, like take it in the back if it needs to be tighter.
Yeah.
Or put like darts in the top to make it a little bit more round, and a dart is like kind of cut out a slice and then glue it together, like pull it together. So it like, I don't know. Otherwise, sometimes mine are really like flat if I don't do that. They don't like stay round. But yeah, I do generally the same thing.
Yes.
How do you keep the ears from like bending over the weight under the weight of the fur?
I'd say if they're bending a whole bunch, that the like base is too thin. Like on Phoenix, my other suit, I wanted her ears to be floppy, so her ear is literally just a ½ inch triangle, just glued right on, and it flops a whole bunch. But this one is a little curved, and I put foam on the back, so the base is actually like 1.5 inches thick. So this one is much more sturdy.
Yeah, I'd say I use those blue
PVA
camping foam. Like you put it under your tent when you go camping, so it's like you're not laying on rocks. They sell it at Walmart. It's in blue rolls. It's like harder. I typically use that because it doesn't like flop under the weight of fur. But also if you have a curved base, it's not. Are you talking about like it flopping like this, or like the tip flopping?
Like it just kind of flopping forward when you want it to stand upright.
Yeah, curve the base a little bit. It doesn't even have to be that drastic, but just a little will prevent that a lot. And making sure the base is a more like firm structure will help a lot too.
Akari. Yes?
How do you get glue out of the fursuit? Like if you get it on the fur accidentally?
What kind of glue?
Whatever you're using.
Okay. Spray glue, well, hot glue you can kind of, typically, if it just dripped, you can just take it off, like pull it off.
If you get hot glue on the outside, I just don't touch it.
Yeah,
And
if
let
you
it
drip it.
dry, and you can probably just like pull it out of the fur and it won't do anything. But if you like, oh no, I got hot glue in my fur, I'm gonna try and get it out, you're just gonna mush it more into the fur. So I'd just say don't touch it if you get it on
If
it.
you mush it in, I don't know there's much you can do.
No,
Other than
probably
cut
not.
that section out and replace it. Spray glue is another story. It's kind of difficult to work with.
You just like brush it out.
I try brushing it, sometimes it doesn't, but like if it's just like a little spray of it, you can typically brush it out. If it's like a clump that got like mushed or something, it's kind of the same story. You either have to like trim it out and replace the spot, or
Maybe like
just there.
rubbing alcohol or something.
Yeah, I haven't really tested it too much with spray glue. I haven't had an incident where it was like a huge glob of spray glue. Yeah.
So when rubbing alcohol, you worry about first bleeding if they've been dyed?
They shouldn't, no. Unless it's a very
Dipped in
weird
dye?
Well, some furs are dyed from white that I've seen.
Right.
Not
I
very
don't-
often. I mean, unless the person did it themselves. But there's
And I
only
don't-
one fur I know of that
Yeah.
is like dyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows that pain.
I try my like best not to use furs that are like will bleed, because that makes it more difficult to wash.
Yeah, most furs are like plastic that is that color. It's not like clothes where it's a fiber and then they dye it the correct color. It actually like comes out that color of their magic fur machines. So like you can use bleach and stuff on fur and it won't affect it because it's like in the fibers of the plastic. Yep.
Is it better to use a sewing machine or hand stitch when doing the body?
I'd say sewing machine for sure. Hand sewing like hand sew small markings because it is really hard to get small markings into the sewing machine. But anything you can put in the sewing machine, for sure, put it through the sewing machine because it'll be much stronger. If you do have like small markings, like on this body, it has a whole bunch of spots. And actually, like after I hand sewed them, I went back and I put hot glue on the back of the seam and just kind of like saturated it because from my experience, like small spots always end up coming apart. So I just like to go back with hot glue and put it in the seams. I know you can also do it with silicone. I'll probably switch to doing silicone because I think it just looks a little bit nicer. But that'll really hold those seams together. You have anything?
Yeah, I machine sew. It's just a much stronger, more reliable seam than hand sewing.
And that takes 3 months.
It's
yeah.
much faster. Yeah. And some suits I do like the spots and stuff. I
Yeah.
have to hand sew, but they're more likely to come undone then just because they're not machine made, so it's not as reliable. But any other questions?
Back in the black right there.
I've made a few suits and I've tried a few different methods for trimming, and I can never seem to get it even enough. Like there's always like little clumps all over the place, and no matter how often I go over them, they seem to just stay there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you avoid that? Or
The fur shaving, like on the face, is that what you're saying?
yeah, like how do you
Mm-hmm.
get your fur pile to be a fairly even length without like looking all choppy and gross?
You're really good at that.
Yeah. Typically when I make a head, I cut the pattern pieces out beforehand, before like sewing it together. I shave them on a flat surface, so you can like have a more even, steady hand. I pre-shave them, and then after they're on the head, I just go over it again. I brush it out really good and go over it again. But it's really a matter of having a steady hand, because if you tilt the shaver, that's when you get the chops. So that's why I recommend pre-shaving it first, because it's easier on a flat surface to hold it flat. It's a lot harder when it's on a curved surface already. And once you make a shave like divot that's too deep, there's not a lot you can do to like smooth it back out, unless it's like still shallow enough where you can like make it all that length like short. But if it's all the way to the backing, it's gonna always be there, unfortunately. But yeah, and I go over mine a lot, like I go over once, again, brush it out, again. I don't just like shave it all in one sitting and that's how it is. I just do a lot of layers.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Just lots of patience and nitpicking. I like go back with like the tiny little scissors and like fix every tiny little thing. You know, it's just a lot of patience and a little nitpicking.
Natural.
Any other questions? You and the rainbow?
I wanted to also ask, with the razors, I know that a lot of razors get like hot when they are used for too long. How do you prevent it from like melting the fur if it's like no plastic fur?
Yeah, I just take a break and wait for it to cool down. There really isn't much else you can do for that unless you have two. You can switch back and forth. Yeah, I'd say just take a second and let it cool down.
If you use oil, it helps.
Yeah.
On the blades, that's like part of the reason. Like it's to help the blades move faster and keep them clean, but it's also to help keep them cool. And I've shaved for quite a while with mine being like really hot, like it like would probably burn my skin. And I haven't noticed any of the fur melting, but if you do notice, like you're just gonna have to let it cool down or have two pairs so you can like switch between them.
Yeah, you do want to like lubricate your blades pretty often. Say once or twice per head.
Someone's jamming out.
Fox and pepper downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I put oil on my blades every time I use them, sometimes even like in the middle of shaving if it feels like it's not cutting good.
Yeah, like your blades shouldn't really wear down like they normally would. I think like if you're dog grooming or stuff like that, the blades wear down because the dogs have dirt in them, but you're shaving clean plastic. So like I've been using the same pair of shavers for years, so they don't really like wear down like they normally would. Amy, do you have a question?
Oh, yes. What tools do you use to fire foam and smooth it?
I use a combination of like long blades, like the ones that go in a box cutter for like cutting out big things, make like a big block for the muzzle, or like if I'm cutting off a big chunk of something, just because if you're using scissors a lot, it'll hurt your hand eventually. But then I go back with the scissors for like fine tuning to about this smoothness. You don't need the foam to be like absolutely smooth because the fur will cover up these tiny little bumps. They don't really matter too much.
Yeah, I do about the same, like for the muzzle and the cheeks and the eyebrows, I use a longer, it's box cutter, but it's the ones that you can like snap them off, so it's like a big long blade, and use it like kind of as a knife. Otherwise I go in with scissors to like refine the shape and smooth it out a little bit more. And right, it doesn't have to be super, super smooth, but enough where you could lay fur over it and it's not gonna be bumpy.
Your thoughts on the electric tricky knife?
You remember that one time we bought one?
Yep. And it didn't work.
It didn't work. I don't know if we just bought a bad one or we were dumb, because that was when we were like
First
16
starting out,
or something. Yeah, if you have one that works well, that would probably work good. It might be a little big for like doing the head, but we wanted it for Digi when we were using foam back then. For like Digi, I think it would probably be really good with like getting large chunks off. If you have one.
Well, and it's also, I would be a little scared if you're not, I don't know, used to using one, because like a little slip and cut
your finger off.
I wanted to ask what was the hardest Fursuit you ever made? What made it a unique challenge? Like what made it difficult?
Okay, Dracis wasn't the hardest, it was just the most time consuming. Dracis is a snow leopard, and I sewed in all of the spots, and they're the, what's it called? When they're
rosettes?
Yeah, rosettes. So they're like 3 spots for 1 spot. He has them all over his body. So that took a long time. Wasn't the most difficult though. I just made a crocodile. So it has a like crocodile tail, and it was all that was probably my most difficult one, because figuring out how to have it on the body, how to keep its shape but not fill it, because it's a gigantic tail, not fill it all with polyfill, and then I wanted it to have that flat shape on the top like crocodiles do, but on the sides still be like pointed, so I couldn't just take two pieces like I normally do for a tail pattern. So that was pretty difficult. And then he had spikes going down his whole back, but it wasn't individual spikes, it was the ones that like connect. So that was pretty hard.
Yeah, I'd probably say that like the angel dragons are usually, I wouldn't say like difficult, but like time consuming, with like feathers on the tail and spikes and then horns and wings and all the extra goodies they come with. But for like I said earlier, the things that are difficult for me are stuff that's out of my comfort zone, like the deer, and I made like a bighorn sheep maybe like a year ago, and that one was really challenging for me, trying to figure out how I wanted to do the horns and like figure out the eyes, because they have weird eye pupils and stuff like that. Those are what's difficult for me. And hooves I have troubles with, just because I don't do them very often, so I don't have a lot of trial and error, which is mostly how I learn things. It's just doing them and doing them over and improving from last time. Yeah. Yes, Akari again.
What type of sewing machine would you recommend for a beginner? And maybe more, I guess, when you improve, what type of sewing machine should you aim for?
Okay. I have a Singer Heavy Duty, which is what I've used in the last few years, and that one has been very good for me. I know that's not a super fancy one. I'm pretty sure you can get that at like a regular Joann's and stuff like that. It wasn't very expensive either, maybe a few $100s. I know the like old sewing machines that are like metal and like have a motor and like you turn them on and they're like, those ones are scary, but I know they are beasts, and if you can figure out how to work those, they will never let you down. But I personally have not figured them out because they aren't very user-friendly. Yeah.
I have some experience with industrial sewing machines.
Mm-hmm.
There's two types.
Mm-hmm.
The old type has a motor with a clutch, and it operates at, the motor operates at full speed, and you feather in and out the clutch.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
new style, which you can just, if you ever get a second-hand industrial sewing machine, you can buy what's called a servo motor for it, and it's very modern, and it can go from very slow to very fast, and there's a little dial on them where you can adjust the speed, so you can actually have it just go from slow to medium, but no quicker.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that's about $100. So if you ever go into the industrial side and you get a good machine, it's easy to upgrade it to a modern servo motor.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, they seem like great machines if you can get into them.
I just worry because when I'm like sewing something, especially like a curved like seam, I always like slow down as I go, like just automatically. So if it was like a set speed, I'd be scared and I'm just like, you know.
The modern servo motor can slow to a beautiful crawl.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds really nice.
I don't even remember the brand, but it was from Joann's and it was specifically heavy duty. But it's still like one you can like move on a tabletop. It's not like industrial or anything like that.
Yeah, you.
What would you say is the best way to do horns and antlers? Like, would you make a foam base for that? How do you attach them?
Okay, well, for like small little horns, like on the angel dragons I do, they have like small little inch horns. For that, I just do fabric in a triangle and then just glue it on. Or no, I usually like sew it into the fur, so it's like really secured. But you could also just glue it on if you really wanted. But for like large antlers like this is actually like EVA foam, which is
Bottom of feet.
this stuff right here. Oh, look at you. Didn't have to get my leg up.
I don't know, someone wants to grab this.
You get EVA foam. It's like garage mats, I think is what it's labeled as.
Workout mats.
Workout mats.
You can get it at Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart and Lowe's, Home Depot. That stuff there specifically is the diamond pattern, but you can get, the stuff on my feet is just like a weird texture. It isn't diamond. But yeah, I use that for these. Just this way I cut out the profile. This also has a bit of foam in it, just because I didn't want it to be super heavy. I kind of diluted it with foam. And you can carve that stuff. And if you have like a Dremel, you can like carve it really easily. I don't personally have one, but it looks nice. And then on the like scalp part of this, I have another piece of EVA foam, so it has like a solid piece to go into, because if you just glued this onto foam, it would be stiff, but it would wobble this way. So I have like a little like rectangle I cut out in the scalp piece and then like stick in the antler piece. Yeah. I don't know, you don't do
I don't really do antlers. I mean, I could, I just haven't recently. So I haven't really solidified a technique for that yet. But I mean, that sounds very good. I'll probably try it.
Yes.
What do you use for like the tongue and stuff? And also, what is like the cardboardy stuff in the eyes?
Okay. For the tongue, oh yeah, you have it here.
This is Minky. Is that what you use on this one?
Yeah, this one's Minky.
So here's Minky.
Minky's just like a soft fabric. It's kind of like fur, but it isn't. It's just like fuzzy. I just like it.
Blankets.
Yeah, like a baby blanket, yeah. I like it because it's soft and it doesn't pill or pile.
Yeah, like fleece, if you know, when it gets worn or rubbed, it like gets little like balls of fuzz on it. That's called like pilling, when it pills. But Minky doesn't do that.
But it's really personal preference on what you want to do.
And then,
you're
talking about the eye plastic, the white?
Yeah.
That's this. It is, I'm just gonna grab it. I came with there. I get mine from Tab Plastics. It's just a thin, like, sheet of plastic that you can buy. It's pretty cheap, honestly, for a big roll.
It's like $8 for like.
I order it online.
Tabplastics.com. It's like under plastic sheets, and then it's called like HDPE, opaque, something like that. It's called something really weird.
Yeah. It's here.
I know Jill Costumes also has like an Etsy store.
Yes, and she often has like different colors that you can't really find and stuff. But it is pretty flexible. You can cut it with scissors. I've had some plastics where you cut them and they crack. This doesn't.
And hot glue sticks to it pretty well.
Although I will say that the yellow isn't quite as like, you can like kind of see darker colors behind it. So you have to be kind of careful what you glue it on or what you glue onto the back of it.
Don't put like a bunch of Sharpie on the back.
I haven't had that issue with the white though.
No.
Just the yellow for whatever reason.
Yes.
Some people use foamies.
Yeah. We're bringing an example.
Yeah.
I used to use foamies when I was first starting, and you absolutely can if you're a beginner and you just want to use foamies. They aren't terrible or anything. They just sometimes can get like dented if you hit it hard, and they don't have a lot of structure. So like over time, they kind of warp and get a little wobbly. You can use them, but the plastic is a better option.
You used to use foamies?
Yeah.
And I've also seen if they get wet or something and they were Sharpie on the back, they bleed. Did you say that?
No, I didn't say that.
Sorry, I was. They don't really hold up well over time.
So this is Kaito, one of the suits that she made.
The suit I made. I just thought it would be good to have
An example?
another example from another because we do slightly different techniques on things.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, back there. No, that's, yeah, you.
So what would you say is the best way to attach the fur around the mouth, and how would you get kind of a lip look? Because I know the deer, you can kind of see it, but how would you say is the best way to attach that?
I personally have always sewn the inside, like the black part of the inside of the mouth, both the bottom and the top, right in with the fur pattern. But I know that's kind of an advanced technique, and if you aren't super confident in that, you can just neatly glue the fur around the mouth down. You don't have to sew it, absolutely. Mine don't really have like a lip. I have seen people who like sew in a like little tube of fabric around the lip to create an extra lip, or like a more pronounced lip, but it really is a personal preference of what you want to do. As long as you do it neatly, like you can do whatever you want. But I just personally have always sewn it in right with the fur pattern. As well as the nose, I really just include everything and sew it all together and then glue it on.
Yeah, I do the same, I believe. Yeah, where it's just the flat part is sewn,
Yeah.
and you kind of don't put the teeth all the way up to the edge. I think some people, what they do is like roll it like this, kind of, and cut like a short little tiny bit. You know what I'm talking about? And that like creates a sort of lip, but mine is more like an illusion, kind of. Like it looks like it's a lip, but it's just a flat.
Yeah, the like bottom of the mouth is just flat.
Yeah.
But if you like, this one looks like it has a lip, just because I put the teeth a little bit far back, but this is actually just flat. Yes. Yeah, in front.
How do you put like piercings in ears and like anywhere else, like nose and other things?
Well, Kaito actually has gauges, which is coming to you next.
Like they're just like thicker hobby store clothes.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about
How I did Kaito specifically was just 2 pieces of like a wooden disc, and his specifically we actually like printed out pictures of galaxies and I sealed it and then we glued it on, and then I put like fun foam around the edge.
The foamies.
Yeah, the foamies. And like glued it on each side of the ear. You have to cut down the fur all the way to the backing before you glue it down, so otherwise it's just floating on top of the fur. But I have tried to do like a tunnel in the ear and then put the gauge in, but it's hard to get it to stay in, or the ears sometimes aren't perfectly flat or thin enough to like have it go through perfectly and like not be at a weird angle on the back side or something. And it also, when it's a big giant thick thing, it's gonna make the head a lot heavier. I've never done like actual metal piercings because typically they're too small for a fursuit head because they're like much bigger than a human's head. But you can like make your own like custom, more like plush fake piercings out of like shiny fabric or something, like metal-y fabric. Have you done any?
Are you talking about like the barbell tips?
Yeah, or like a tongue ring or a lip, you know.
One of my old suits, I put industrials in them, and I just used real industrial piercings because that head was pretty small and they were like to scale. And then later I did one, it needed like an eyebrow piercing, and I used an industrial piercing and just like put it through because it like scaled correctly into an eyebrow piercing. So if you get creative and things are the correct size, you can use real piercings and just put it through like you would for a real piercing.
One more thing, are angel dragons like okay to have piercings? Like, is that something that's bad or?
I would see why not. Yeah, I would say they could. Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, fabric or some kind of like clay. Although clays can break and it's hard to like secure. But if it's something small, you can maybe use clay. Yeah.
So an example with Kaito, how do you go about putting that lining on the inside?
You mean like the custom fabric?
Yeah.
I use the spray glue. Oh, you mean like how do I get the pattern?
No, I mean just like how do you keep it in there safely without popping out or coming right?
It's glued. It's glued into the foam, but then like the neck piece is just sewn on the bottom edge. Like I line mine all the way down to the edge of the neck cover, just because like I don't really like the feeling of the fabric on my neck and then like the sweat and stuff. But yeah, I patterned the inside of the head with it and spray glue it on, just right onto the foam. You're talking about like the lining on the inside, yeah. Yeah.
And do you do that before you start building the face?
Some people do. Or you mean like the fur on the face?
Or even the foam?
No, I do the whole foam, because if you look at this foam base, it doesn't have anything inside. It's just because I start the bucket head of foam. I don't like, some people like will take a balaclava and put it on a base and glue it onto that. I just don't do that. So I line it after it's all foam.
Yeah, we do like the fur and the inside at the same time, because the seam of where the inside of the mouth and the head lining meet is sewn together before we glue it on, right? You do the same thing?
Yeah.
So it's like all one piece, so we do them at the same time. Just take the inside going into the mouth and then going around, just enclose the whole thing basically.
It's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it is. You actually don't need to do it that way. That's like an advanced method. But yeah, that is what we do.
It just looks a lot more comfortable than a balaclava on your head all the time.
Yeah, I do like it. Yeah, and wait.
How did you have that custom fabric made? Like, where did you go?
This is an example of what I do. It's if the customer requests it and they're willing to get it themselves, I'll put it in their head. But I custom order from Spoonflower.
Is it like, what's it called?
Sport lycra.
Sportswear or sports lycra?
It's not cheap. It is custom, but yeah, it's just sports lycra, and you can either, because it's like a huge big pattern, so you need to think about. You can either commission an artist to make a pattern for you or draw your own, but like it is going to repeat, so just like be aware of that when you have the art line up and everything. But yeah, Spoonflower.
Yes. How is there like a minimum like amount of it that you can order? It's custom.
You can get what's called a fat quarter, I believe, which is, I don't even know the dimensions, but it's like this big. Yeah. And then you can order by the yard past that.
How do you make a suit look professional?
Just go slow and
Yeah, I'd say like the small details
are really important.
Like how I said, I like go back with the tiny little scissors and like fix every little tiny hair that's out of place.
I think the word is probably clean.
Yeah.
Like if you see any little bits of glue that are coming out from places, like get rid of them, or fur, right, like little pieces of fur that are kind of sticking out in directions.
And having like
Trim
everything,
them.
like these paws actually don't have a wrist liner because I made these on the way to the convention and I don't care about myself, but like putting a little wrist liner on the hands and like lining the head.
Or even like, for example, machine sewing this seam instead of hand sewing it, because if you hand sewed it, you would see the stitching. Machine sew is a cleaner seam. Same with the lip seam. It's a lot cleaner if that's sewn rather than glued or machine sewn or hand sewn.
Yeah. Yeah, back there.
How do you make sure that the inner, the iris part of the plastic stays smooth and not, doesn't have any little like scissor bumps when you cut it out?
Are you talking about the plastic itself?
Yes.
I just am really careful with the scissors. You can like put it on a piece of flat on the table and like use a blade or something too, like an X-Acto knife or a box cutter if you're careful, and just try to get a really nice. I it with my hand, so I don't.
Yeah, I like, first I go in with the scissors and cut out the hole, and then if there's like any small imperfections, I'll go back with a little X-Acto blade and like clean it up. I know also you could use like sandpaper or something like that to sand it to get a really like smooth and good finish. But yeah, other than that, just like being really careful and taking your time, probably.
Sorry.
To add to the spoon color thing, since I did get my suit recently from MulticolorBark, it was like 3 yards.
Yes.
3 yards was about $100 from Spoon Flower with delivery, and it took about a week, 2 weeks.
I don't remember what you got.
With ordering from Spoon Flower, you gotta be careful though, because if it's like, oh, last minute I want to get my fursuit line, you have to consider that it's gonna take a while for them to print it, ship it, and give it to your maker.
You can get rush shipping, but it's like significantly more.
Yeah, if you're spending $100, it's just already for 3 yards for a full suit. But I just wanted to mention that, like, if you decide that you wanted to get inside lining, please make sure there's like time for it, because it can just, if the maker's ready to work on your body or something, they're waiting for lining. It's kind of hard.
Very good comment, thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, no, I'm kind of a joke a little bit, sorry about that.
We can come back to you, it's okay.
Oh wait, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
How do you like price things?
Oh, that's a good question.
Think about like time yourself when you're working on something. Think about how many hours you put into it. Think about the quality of the materials you're using, how much they cost, your skill level.
Yeah, I'd say it's mostly like skill level and experience. Because like, I don't know. That's such a good question, and I don't know how to like answer it properly, because it is something that I struggle with. Like, if you're charging like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a fursuit, you want to make sure you give the customer like their money's worth, and it is like a lot of pressure for me to be like, this has to be perfect because they paid a lot of money for this. But I just try to remember that like if I still have customers coming back to me, then I must be pricing it good and they are happy with what they want.
Right, a lot of people say that if people will pay it, then it's fine. If you all of a sudden don't have anyone, I mean, starting off is different because you have to create a follower base, but if people don't come back, then maybe you have to reconsider.
Yeah.
How much experience do you think a person should have? Like how many finished suits or whatever before they take actual commissions?
That's hard because I've seen people who like, this is my first fursuit head, and it's like amazing. And it's like, wow, okay. I don't feel like I got anywhere good until I was like 4 years into making fursuits. So I do think it depends upon like your pure talent of what you're born with.
I also think even on that note, like if your first one is really good, it's still important to, I'd say at least do 3, just so you get techniques down and you can practice on like making it clean and like figuring out what doesn't work that well and what you can improve on before you start working with other people on it, because I've been through it and like just learning, like I've had, suits where seams come undone really easily, and all it took was for me to just learn the blanket stitch and it would have been just fine. But if I had just, worked on it more first and made sure I felt confident in like the quality and everything, and then you can avoid someone else getting that, so.
You could like make a pre-made and be like, this was just practice, so maybe everything's not perfect, and like what you see is what you get, and that would be like great practice. Amy. Good question. It's so hard to answer that question. I always say anywhere and everywhere. Online stores, in-person stores. In LA, they have the fashion district, which is amazing. She hasn't been there yet, but I've been there twice, and it is just like fursuit making heaven, because they have just like a whole bunch of shops with a bunch of fur in them. But I think just like fabric.com is a great place to start, or like fursuitsupplies.com.
There's so many websites.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes for meat makers especially to look online and know the quality of the fur, or like if it would be good for a suit, and it kind of takes a lot of experience. So
why don't you talk about like the different furs that you brought there?
Yes.
Just one very important thing I'd like to recommend is get sample swatches of the fur.
Yes.
Swatches.
Because the color, what you see on the screen, can be completely different from the actual fur.
Yeah, absolutely.
It almost, depending on what you're getting, I learned the hard way, get a couple.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And most websites will have swatch options, but there's a lot of different kinds of fur, and so I brought a bunch of swatches, but like, and it depends what you want, because there's shag, which some people don't like the look of because it can get kind of clumpy, but it's longer and really soft. And then there's furs like bunny, which is what fox is mostly made out of.
Yeah, the grape.
And it's kind of more of a realistic feel. It's still really like smooth, but it's not like this soft, clumpy. It's more of like, I don't even know how to explain, like a dog kind of, but soft. And then there's different furs like pattern furs where it has spots already in it, and beaver fur, which is pretty important because a lot of people use it for the short on the face so they don't have to shave it, or for fingers. I don't know if fox has beaver fingers. Yes. It's just, it takes years of ordering fur to find what you like to work with, and I would say that suits look really nice when they have different lengths of fur instead of just one solid fur. Like fox has fluffy chest, and that's called Arctic fox. And is that Arctic fox?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll just like learn the names. Most suit makers use the same like
Fox and then the beaver on the belly.
And that can be hard too sometimes, because what we call beaver, one website might call it beaver and another website might call it seal or something. So swatches are probably the best bet when you're first time ordering fur, to make sure you're getting exactly what you want.
Well, our time is almost up, so I'll maybe take one more question, and then you guys can come up and take a closer look at anything else, or ask us something if you're really shy. Yeah, you're right there.
For someone who's never made anything, how should they start working towards building fursuits?
I'd say just do it.
Jump right in. Because a lot of people never start because it's daunting.
Yeah, it is very scary to start out with, and I'd say that your first thing you make probably won't be that good. My first fursuit head was just awful. So just do it, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again.
Right, it's okay if when you get done you're like, oh, this didn't really turn out how I thought it would. It's okay. Like, everyone starts somewhere. Well, that's how me and you first started. We did, like, both my first head was horrific. It looked like a cow. It was supposed to be a fox. So, it's okay. Just laugh about it. You learn every time you make another.
Yeah, I'd say like 90% of my skill is just trial and error, and be like, okay, well, note taken, and I'll do better next time. Yes, that is about it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the audience participation, because this would have been really awkward if no one asked questions, so thank you so much.
Right, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Silver Gattoman, he bought me a coffee. Silver Gattoman, here is the song for thee. He likes to video all the panels at the cons. You should go and watch them, whether they are short or long. Silvergatoman, you video that's not a jibe. All of you go to his YouTube channel and like and subscribe.